So now let's try to add some widgets to our window. I'll move my windows to previous group and resize everything so I can continue working on this window. So once again, if the window is closed, you can just double click on it to select it. If you want to add widgets to this window, it's very important that you make a selection. You need to select it in the tree view, so it's actually will be used as a target of new objects to be created. We can either use the widget bin to pull appropriate gadgets or widgets from here. For instance, input right here. Once you click it, it gets dragged and dropped on the form automatically. I'll delete it for now. But another version of it could be generated simply through the menu. You can go to New, and then Text, New Text, and you see there's a input control available on this menu. So we can generate it this way. As you see that we also have its appearance such that there is a box, which I will try to resize right now, for our input, and there's a label automatically generated for us. So the properties window opens automatically, and now the input box is selected in this tree view. So if you close this property box, you can double click on this input right here, and it'll open again. Now there are 3 different tabs in the properties typically. So you would add the name of the control right here. In order to be able to interact with this text box, we need to give it a name. So I'm just going to give it the name input box. Just simply copy and paste it from our handout. Like I told you before, it's important to maintain consistency with this handout, because other portions of the code, when we copy and paste, will fail to compile if you misspell any of these names. So just continue using them consistently. So right now this is our input box, and just we can leave it at this. I'll just close this input. And another gadget that's available is the output box. So again, new text output, or you can select it from the widget bin, and it's called the output right here. See, it's called text output. So this is the second box. It gets aligned with the first one, but you can move it around, of course, if you want. So let's give it its name, output box. Okay, just again, I copied and paste from here to the properties and close it. Now, if we'd like to create a button, the process is quite similar. You can say new buttons button right here. But one important thing is that when you generate new widgets, just be sure that you select the window which will be basically the housing or the container for these widgets that we are trying to add to it. So I'm going to say new buttons, and the first choice is a button. So the button gets dropped on the form like this. We can move it around. Of course, we can go to change its label. Let's change the label to test, for example. And also, if we want to be able to capture the result of the click, typically you would give it a name. Let's name it BTN for button underscore test. Notice there is an area in the properties of this button that's called a callback. A callback is a function that we can call in case when user clicks this button. So we'll give it also a name that's called callback button. There could be multiple callbacks in our application, but this is the first example of the callback that we're using. And this will be a function which will be generated by Fluid for us, where we can specify whatever code we like to manage our text boxes and any other graphical elements in our user interface. So I'm going to close the properties. So as it's describing in our lab handout, if we want our button to do something useful, we need to attach a callback button to our button widget. Just follow this set of steps. First, make sure that you select make window function. Then we'll copy and paste these definitions from our handout by going to new code function method, and you can see here name and arguments. Will replace this by this callback button, and the return type will specify a static void. So static means this does not belong to any objects. We generate this function, and you see that Fluid now understands that we have another function here as part of our application. So now we need to add some custom code to the callback function. To do that, we can select this function right here and say new code, and this opens code properties, and this is sort of like a code properties that belong to this function. You can see that this is a hierarchical structure. What we'd like to do is that we're gonna try to test our text boxes. So I'm just going to copy and paste right here like this, and click OK. Now notice that we're using cout in our code. So we need to be able to tell Fluid that we want to include IOStream header. So to do something like this, we can say new code. Once again, select make window, which is the first order of functions on top of this Fluid project. And then select new code declaration, and choose a declaration. And here we can say include IOStream. Right here, and just click OK, and then you see that it's added at the bottom of this list, but you can use edit and move to earlier or later. So F2 moves this line to an earlier position, and we'll move it right to the top. So once it's created at the bottom, you can just move it to the top. All right, so then what we'd like to do is to be able to add a window closing callback. But before we do something like this, let's test the functionality of what we have made so far. In Fluid, when you're ready to try this code in our application, just click File, Save. So this will save all the changes that we've made so far. And as a separate step, you need to say write code. So write code regenerates our source files. And now if you take a look at the new version of our header file, you see that now we have populated it with input box and output box and also the button. So all of these gadgets are now present here, and these are the types of these gadgets. Now notice that there is also a declaration of a callback button, and in the generated file here we find our callback button also generated by Fluid. You see that this file is generated by Fluid, which stands for Fastlight User Interface Designer. And so here we should be, so when we click this button, when the application executes, we should be able to say button click written in our console window. And then when the button gets clicked, we're going to extract the value from the input box and pass this value to the output box. So we can type some text in the text input, and when we click the button, we should be able to see it copied to the output. So let's give this a try. No changes in the main function, only in the code that was generated by Fluid. So I'm building this application and it compiles just fine. And now I'm pressing Ctrl F5 to start the program. So here we go. This is our test application. And I'm just going to type something over here, ABC123, and click test. You see what happens is that we register button click, displaying this message for debugging purposes right here. Of course, this is our running application, and this is the console window. So this gets printed right here when we click the button, and then we copy the value from the input box into the output box.